And this hemp is still growing out there, and wild feral hemp they can't get rid of, so they pull up, spend thousands of dollars. So there's a lot of rich American history. This is an old, this is one of the hemp processing plants in Minnesota that's still standing. If you're a geography or agriculture major, study where hemp used to be grown. This is a map of Europe, and I believe this is from like 1917 or something. But every dot represents 1,500 acres. So you can see they grew a lot of hemp in Italy. They process it in a very meticulous way, so it made a very fine linen. They grew a lot of hemp in Russia, which is actually the hemp that was used on the Constitution in the 17 and 1800s. Most of that hemp came from Russia. So it's sort of interesting. We tried to get the hemp industry going in America. It never really got off the ground too much. They did grow some in Kentucky in the mid-1800s, but it just never got off the ground. But this is from the USDA 1970. This is a map of America that shows where cannabis can be grown. So it's like pretty much everywhere.
Not in California?
Well, just see this little bubble right around San Fran, which is sort of funny. Down here. That is strange, because they did grow a lot of hemp in California.
What was the thing in California, that big building in California? When does that work?
That was built in like the early 1800s, and went until the 1950s.
There was a lot of them growing at that time?
Well, they didn't always use hemp. Back in the 1800s they did, but then when they started using polyester and plastic rope and different types of hemp, like manila and jute, they used different fibers for the rope. The rope walk was in use until the 50s. Foreign language. These are some of the different words for hemp or cannabis out there. This is the Chinese symbol for hemp. This is like a shed, and these are the hemp plants being hung upside down to dry. So if you're thinking about a tattoo, so you can study all the origins of hemp and where, what societies use for it and the different words for it. I think it's pretty cool. This is a hard one to come up with. How does cannabis relate to physics? It's sort of hard, and I could use some help if anybody has any answers. But power is defined as joule rate of work. How many? And so 1 watt or 746 watts equals 1 horsepower. So figure out how many horsepower in a ton of seed or hemp stalk. We try to look at the physics of that. The physics of sound waves. People are making hemp speakers. The hemp fabric for the cones, which is very cool. If you're a math major, study the asymptotic relationship between high and frequency of use. So I don't know, like people that don't smoke very much, they smoke like once every 6 months, they get like really stoned. But if you smoke every day, then you don't really get stoned at all. And why is that? So study, this is people that don't smoke very often. You're really high, and this is a person that smokes every day. So you study that asymptotic relationship, and even call your musical group the asymptotes. And you can analyze the different risk profiles of growing versus dealing, which is sort of an abstract concept. And also you can develop a biodegradable cell phone or computer made out of hemp plastic. So you can do that. And one thing I do need help with is developing the Cannabis Curriculum Clearinghouse. This database that I mentioned, we could set up something online where people could access information freely and deposit it at the same time.
Like a wiki?
Like a wiki. Yeah, that would work. But if somebody wants to do a class project on that, then I'd be willing to work with them to help provide some information and guidance, and then we can take it from there. But like a wiki. Hempopedia. Wiki.
Yeah, seriously, you should do it.
And communicate, but I need help. Communication journalism. We have a lot of problems communicating. The media reluctance to talk about positive stories. They talk about fish oil instead of hemp seed oil. So study that, work on that. Write letters to the editor. Try to get that propaganda changed. Open the debate. That's the thing. They don't want to have the debate because they know they can't win the debate. So we need to keep it open. It's really going good right now. And of course, the DEA doesn't pay attention to their own administrative law judges, so what else is there? Well, that's it. Questions? Questions or answers? Questions?
So, I'm not sure what I would have kind of like, position do you think that the paper and the cotton industry has in like the crushing of the marijuana industry, or the hemp? Because it produces so much, I mean, so much paper and cotton, do you think that they had, you know, like hemp is illegal here, and it's like, it is legal in Canada to grow it, but it's still not big. Like we don't use not all of our papers hemp, not all of our clothes are hemp. Like, so how big of a hand do you think that the paper and cotton industries have in keeping the hemp industry?
I don't know. Do you have an answer to that?
Well, I was going to say, weren't they historically the ones that made it illegal in the first place because they were hurt by the competition from hemp? So they were like, we need to protect our industry, so this needs to be made illegal just like marijuana.
Well,
That's my only understanding.
That's the folklore. That's everybody's understanding. In my 20 years looking into this, I've never really seen any hard evidence that they were, it was a conspiracy or anything like that. But that's something we need help with, to do some research, dig something up to prove that. So other than that, it's just like we have to just sort of move forward and say, okay, I don't think they're standing in our way now, so let's see if we can grow it. But you're right, it's even in Canada where they can grow it, it's not, you're only growing 8,000 acres last year, which is not a lot.
So I've heard that there's no one really actively lobbying against making it legal other than law enforcement. There's no industries that are actually, again, they're not worried about it.
Agree with us?
Law enforcement is an industry.
Right.
Yeah.
I think industry would be all over it. You know, paper industry would love to have something where they can make good
You know,
paper.
green is like the new thing these days, like, that's.
Yes, green is in. Although the pharmaceuticals, as somebody mentioned earlier, they're not into it because the hemp is generic and you can't really patent it.
They go back to children and the debate about drugs. With hemp, in the Netherlands, they have the lowest in the best countries in the world. They have the lowest cannabis use with high school students. Because they sort of, the kids don't think it's illegal or cool. They look sort of, when I was there, sort of looked down upon red locks, guys going, to them it's not cool, so they have the lowest rate. Why isn't that said here? I mean, people get on forums and TV or places where they get educated the public. I've never heard of that. That's the truth, and the lowest in the world, and it's going strong by it. Why don't they just help people hear that? Why don't you say that?
That's a good argument, and it's similar to in Switzerland where they have a heroin injection sites where people can go and get their heroin and get medical care and get job advice, and hey, all of a sudden they get a job, they get better health care. They might still use heroin, but they're a lot healthier. It's like, geez, there's a good, easy, safe way to use drugs, and by Holland's model, it sort of demystifies that whole bad stuff.
I'm not sure if there's an answer to this, but I think based on the history in the U.S., is there any indigenous use from the native peoples in America or around the world that utilized hemp?
Well, I mean, they used it in China thousands of years ago, and in Peru, they brought it over, came over to South America like in the 1500s from Europe, but it was not in America. It was not in North America until...
So more of the South American, some native peoples might have, after it was brought over?
Right, after it was brought over, so it's not
really,
as far as I can tell, it's not indigenous to the Americas. Questions? Answers. I need some answers. What do you see for the future? As I've heard today, I agree. It's looking really good. There's a lot of good products, a lot of good hemp products out there, medical aspects, and the whole individual rights. So, we're looking good. We just have to keep the pressure on everybody and keep working, fighting the fight, and documenting all the different uses, since we can use that as more ammunition. All right. Thank you guys very much.